Okay, so here's a challenge. We all know that it's practically impossible to own an electric car and to go anywhere. If we try and drive a long distance, if you believe what anybody tells us, like the media, the man in the pub, then we'd all realise that electric cars have rubbish range. You can't drive anywhere in them, especially when it's cold. Range is really bad. The other thing is that if we want to charge them up, you're going to have to find charging points, really hard to do. If you do manage to find one, you're going to have to wait hours before you can use it, because there's going to be a long queue of everybody else wanting to charge their cars. And also, obviously, it's going to take hours and hours for your car to charge. So it's, you know, what's the point of owning an electric car? That's if you believe everything that people tell you. So what we're going to do is an absolutely mental trip. We're going to drive from Hampshire in the UK to the Alps in an electric car for a ski holiday with the family. It's going to be half term because we've got kids. It's the only time they can have off. Half term is the busiest week to go on the ski holiday for driving through France. So really exciting. And then if we can get there, hopefully we can do a little bit of skiing before coming back. So the trick, get there and back without being stranded on the roads, without any electricity to charge a car. Yeah, so let's see how it goes, should we? Cue the tape. This is quite exciting because we're driving all the way to Switzerland to go skiing. Okay, that doesn't sound very environmentally friendly, but we are in an electric car. We've been charging up today using solar power from our roof, and now we're starting our trip where we're heading to start with down to Le Château, the Europe tunnel. So very exciting as we head out. On the way we're going to be charging up at many stops. We're going to drive through the night tonight because it should be just a little bit easier on the roads, I think, in terms of traffic. So we'll see how that goes, and we'll let you know how it is to charge all the way down to Switzerland. So here we go. As this one's quite a long way, I did do a little bit of homework before we set off and marked out where I think we're going to stop off on the way for charging points. Most of them are Tesla charging points, so that should be quite simple, and all in France. Spaced about an hour to 2 hours between each other, so it breaks up the journey quite nicely as well. There we go, we've made it out to Folkestone with the Tesla supercharger and getting a little supercharge whilst we're waiting.
They've got skis on the top of their Tesla here.
There we go, good charging up.
Yeah.
We're doing a Tesla supercharger whilst having our tea. So we've only got about 5 minutes until it's finished, and then we can hit the road again. Yum.
If you couldn't tell.
902. We're going on the train. That's the train. I don't think that's dance. I'm holding this angle because it's right. And this is the first video. I probably sound like this.
On a train. We're going along a bit more quickly, and we're being invited to go on a sea train. It's very weird, there's no one else on it. This is like something you see in photography.
So we're charging again, we're in France. This is our first stop in France after coming over from the Le Château underneath the channel. So we've done a little drive and we're at a place called, where are we? Let's see if we push that down, we can see where we are on the map. It's Saint-Quentin.
Saint-Quentin.
En français. So yeah, so we're charging up at the moment, and here we are, and it's quite handy because there's a Burger King there, but we're not going to use it. Another Tesla coming at us.
We have a very traditional French restaurant just across the way from here.
The Burger King.
Burger King.
So we've got, I think we're waiting for about 25 minutes to get to
King in in French is
a good charge
wow.
amount.
Goodbye.
So this is quite a good charging station. There's quite a lot of them. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. 18 charges I can count. That's loads, isn't it? There we go. Right, we made it to the next service station to charge up. This is one called near Reims. Reims. Yeah, there we go. We're charging, got 39% at the moment, and we're charging at 200 kilometers per hour ish. Oh, it's starting to crank up a bit now. That's good.
Cool.
30 minutes remain. Let's see once it
Here they
gets up
come.
to full speed.
Here they come. This is the school trip. They're all going back on the coach now.
There we go. And see the people who have had a little break here.
We keep catching up with those guys.
That's always good.
No, I said for my son.
So we're cracking through it. It's now
They've been on a
1:35,
trip.
so 25
We're
to
going
2.
to go to the toilet here.
It's a charge map card. Sign up to it on the internet, and then it allows you to use lots of different types of chargers and pay for them across Europe. So really useful for our trip to France and Switzerland. Here we are on the Tesla, behind the Tesla, Le Tunnel sur la Manche, in fact. I'm driving in a Tesla behind another Tesla that's equally as dirty in the train. We're coming out right at the front. I think we're coming out right at the front. We're going to turn. So the big question is, how much did it actually cost us to do this trip, and how much charge do we use, and what were the carbon emissions? So what I've done is I've put together a spreadsheet. I love spreadsheets. To try and work out what these carbon emissions and costs were. So you can see that I've put down every single location where we charged. I've pointed out whether they're Tesla chargers or it's one where I've used the charge map card, a charging point. I've shown the exact amount of kilowatt hours that we put into the car, the price that we paid in the various currencies, and then the total cost, and then the number of kilowatt hours that we used. So you can see here that actually the cost varies quite considerably from charger to charger. Got one that was done at home with a standard 3-pin plug. Then at the Tesla charger at Folkestone, we were paying about 61 pence per kilowatt hour. Other charging points, the cheapest one was in France, was Ancon, not sure how you pronounce it, but that was only 35 euro cents per kilowatt hour, so that was a bit of a bargain. And then even one in Calais, the Eurotunnel, it didn't cost us any money at all. It was completely free. Don't know if that was meant to be, but we certainly haven't been charged for it. So that's great. So adding up all the charges that we did, it came to £152.30. And the amount of carbon emissions that relates to is just 27.2 kilograms, which is really, really tiny. And the reason why it's so small is because the electricity grid in France is incredibly efficient. There's a little table up here that shows you how efficient they are, and also the one in Switzerland. Most of our stops were done in France. But in the UK, for every kilowatt hour we use in the car, there's a carbon impact, which is about 0.211 kilograms of CO2 equivalent, and that the equivalent includes other greenhouse gases as well. Whereas in Switzerland, it's less than a tenth of that. It's about 6% of that, isn't it? At 0.0129% kilograms of CO2 per kilowatt hour. And the reason why it's so low in Switzerland is that there's a huge amount of renewable energy they use. They have a lot of hydropower, and they've also got some nuclear power as well. And same with France. France is mainly nuclear, with also a good proportion of renewable energy as well. So that lowers the carbon emissions. So actually, a trip across Europe, when you're going through France and Switzerland in particular, is a very low carbon trip. If we add in the shuttle and the French motorway tolls, how does that impact the true costs? So you can see the shuttle, the Eurotunnel, cost us £400 for the car for the return trip. The carbon emissions of the shuttle are really, really low. They're only 4 kilograms for the return trip per car, so minuscule, really. And then there's the French tolls. It is a cost that you need to bear in mind when you are driving through France, and it is quite significant. So the total cost of the trip for driving from the travel point of view was just over £665. And the total carbon emissions, including the shuttle, was just 31.2 kilograms of CO2. So really low. If you compare how that would have been if we had flown, I've worked out the price of the flights, price of a hire car for a week to do the transfer between the airport and the ski resort, airport parking that we'd need to pay for our own car, and then the miles and petrol for driving. So the plane cost would come out at over £1,100. And the carbon emissions are significantly more. The petrol car, for those interested, does beat flying, especially when you're taking 4 people in it. So the total cost there would be £743-ish, and the total carbon emissions there is 354 kilograms of CO2, so less than half that of the aeroplane. If you put the figures together in a nice little graph here, you can see the massive difference in carbon emissions between flying, petrol car, and the electric car. The electric car is just a very, very small fraction of the total carbon emissions of the flight. You see well under 5% of the carbon emissions. So a massive saving. And in terms of the total costs of the trip, when you take account of the flight costs or petrol or the electricity costs, etc., and the tolls on the roads, the electric car once again wins, but only marginally over the petrol car, but still significantly better than flying. In summary then, the conclusion is it is possible to drive all the way from Hampshire to the French Swiss Alps for a ski holiday in the middle of the winter when it's cold. We could drive it in an electric car. We didn't need to queue at any of the charging points. It took a little bit of prep before we did go, so we knew where we were going to stop on the way, but that didn't take a huge amount of time. And there are some good apps on the internet that allow you to do that, including the Charge Map one, which we used. None of the charges took more than 30 minutes. Most of some were as little as 10 minutes. So just the right amount of time to really stop, visit the loo, or go and get a bite to eat, which we did do at a number of the charging points. The carbon emissions associated with the trip are significantly lower than any other way. It's amazing, really. You saw it's less than about 6% of that compared to the flying. So a massive carbon saving. And I think the reality is, over time, the charging points are going to get even better. You're going to find even more and more charging points around. The only one criticism I could have is the one in Morgan's where we didn't have any charging points there, and we had to go a little bit down the road to Chatel. But that's only a small point, and we were able to do the shopping whilst we were charging there. So all in all, a great trip, good fun, very successful, and pretty amazing.